It's been 20 years since it happened. 2 whole decades. For most of that time, I buried the memory, locked it away in some dusty corner of my mind where old soldiers keep the things they don't want to talk about. But this year was different. We had a reunion, a 20-year anniversary get-together. Faces older, belly softer, hair thinner. We laughed, we drank, we swapped the same old stories of sand and sunburns, convoy delays and botched radio comms. But when the night grew quieter, when the drinks slowed, the talk turned, like it always does, back to Highway 80, that cursed road. If you don't know it, let me explain. Highway 80 is a 6-lane ribbon of asphalt cutting straight through the desert, running from Kuwait City up to the Iraqi border at Safwan, and further still into Basra. On paper, it's just another supply route, another artery of war, but history remembers it differently. On the nights of the 26th of February and 27th, 1991, during the First Gulf War, it became something else entirely. The retreating Iraqi army, desperate to flee Kuwait, poured onto that road. Columns of vehicles, tanks, trucks, buses packed with soldiers, even stolen civilian cars loaded with Kuwaiti property choked the highway in a long, desperate line. And then the coalition airstrikes came. For hours, American, Canadian, British, and French aircraft hammered the convoy. Bombs, missiles, strafing runs, it was relentless. Vehicles exploded, fireballs lit the night sky, and soldiers scrambled into the desert only to be cut down in the sand. Later, ground forces moved in, finishing off what remained. By dawn, the road had earned its name, the Mile of Death. Somewhere between 1,400 and 2,000 vehicles destroyed or abandoned, at least 28 tanks, trucks, buses, cars, everything mangled, twisted, burning. The death toll? No one really knows. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Journalists described corpses crammed into wreckage, slumped face down in the sand, bloated and mangled by the desert Sunday. And for years after, if you patrolled that stretch of road, you'd still see the wreckage scattered in the desert. Rusting helmets, webbing, bits of equipment half buried in shifting dunes. Remnants of a massacre frozen in time. That's where my story begins. It was 2003. The invasion of Iraq was underway, and my unit was tasked with convoy support and recovery runs along that very highway. The road had been patched, the tarmac smoothed over, but beneath it all, just beneath the surface, was the history. You could feel it in your bones. At night, Highway 80 was something else. The desert silence pressed down like a physical weight, broken only by the hum of engines and the occasional squawk of radios. No birds, no animals, nothing but emptiness. And that emptiness felt watched. On one particular evening, our packet was the last in the convoy, heading north toward Basra. We had the recovery vehicles with us, tasked with hauling back a disabled truck. When we reached the site, we rolled into position, dust pluming under the tires, and set up a cordon. Standard procedure. Recovery team gets to work. The rest of us fan out, weapons ready, eyes scanning the horizon. That's when things got strange. Through my night vision, I caught movement. Just beyond the cordon, out in the dunes, human-shaped figures. At first, I thought it was just NVG distortion. Night vision can mess with your depth perception, turn shadows into shapes. But it wasn't just me. Over the radio, someone else called it in. Possible movement, bearing 275. Confirm. Sure enough, I saw it again. Dark shapes shifting just at the edge of sight. So the order came down. 4 of us were sent out to investigate. Weapons ready, boots crunching in the sand, hearts pounding harder than we'd admit. The desert felt vast, endless, but the silence was wrong. It wasn't the natural hush of a sleeping land. It was the suffocating quiet of a place holding its breath. We reached the spot where the figures had been reported. Nothing, just sand rippling in the wind. But when we carried out our 5 and 2-0 checks, sweeping near ground, then far ground, 20 meters out, we found something buried shallow in the dune. Rags, torn, sun-bleached, and 3 helmets. They weren't ours. They were Iraqi. No bones, no bodies, just helmets, abandoned, waiting. We called it in, no threat detected, and returned to the cordon. But the night wasn't done with us. Not even close. Over the next half hour, the movement continued. Shadows flitting just beyond the perimeter, never closer, never far enough to dismiss. At times, they looked solid, as if a squad of men were moving silently through the dunes, watching us, circling us. Every time we sent someone to check, nothing was there. At first, I chalked it up to fatigue. We were exhausted, jacked up on caffeine, nerves stretched thin by weeks of tension. Night vision makes ghosts out of shadows. That's what I told myself. But then others started talking. Not just my unit. Over the years, I've heard stories from different units, different deployments, different times. Soldiers who manned that highway at night, convoys that halted in the sand, guards staring into the desert and swearing they saw shapes moving men who were never there when you went to look. Always the same, figures in the dark. And the thing that chills me, even after all this time, is this. We weren't hallucinating the same lie. We weren't imagining it together. Too many men, too many years, too many stories overlap. We all saw them. Sometimes I wonder who they were. Were they the retreating Iraqi soldiers, cut down in the desert, fleeing their burning vehicles into the dunes where they bled out alone under the stars? Were they civilians caught in the storm of bombs and bullets, frozen forever in the last moments of terror? Or were they something older, something drawn to a place soaked in so much death that it warped the very ground beneath it? On that night, I tried not to think about it. I focused on my sector, kept my rifle steady, told myself it was tricks of the light, but deep down, I knew better. There was no light in that desert, no tricks, only shadows moving where no man should move. Even now, 20 years later, the memory is sharp, sharper than I'd like. I can close my eyes and see the green glow of my NVGs, the static hiss of the radio, the black horizon stretching forever, and there, just beyond the cordon, shapes moving with the slow, deliberate gait of men on patrol. Only when you move toward them, they vanish. Like smoke, like ghosts. I don't know what's worse, that they're still out there, or that maybe they're not. Maybe they followed us back, carried in our heads, our dreams, our nightmares. Maybe the desert claimed them, but the memories cling to anyone who's ever stood on that cursed stretch of Highway 80. So when I tell you, don't stop there at night, believe me. Keep driving, keep your lights on the road, don't look too long into the dunes. Because if you do, you might see them. And if you see them, they might see you too. I'll never forget what happened that night. Even now, more than a month later, it lingers in my head like a splinter I can't pull out. I wasn't drunk, I wasn't high, and neither was my buddy who drove us. That's the first thing I need you to know. I know how this is going to sound like a ghost story, or something made up to scare kids around a campfire, but I swear on my life, what we saw was real. It was late, maybe close to midnight, when we left Abilene. My buddy, Chris, had driven us out there earlier in the evening for a jam session with some local musicians. I had my guitar with me, he had his harmonica, and his girlfriend, Emily, mostly just hung out, scrolled through her phone, and laughed at us whenever we botched a song. The night had been full of music, smoke, and laughter, the kind of easygoing night you think about later and smile. But the ride home, that was something else entirely. We were heading east, cutting along Highway 20, somewhere between the 310 and 313 mile markers. If you've ever been out that way at night, you know it's long stretches of empty road, nothing but trees, open land, and the occasional lonely patch of lights from a farmhouse or truck stop. I was in the back seat, in the middle, leaning forward just enough so I could see the yellow lines whipping under the headlights. Chris was driving, elbow perched on the window, cigarette dangling from his fingers. Emily sat in the passenger seat, the glow from her phone screen lighting her face while she flicked through Instagram or TikTok or whatever. The car smelled faintly of smoke and the leftover weed we'd passed around hours earlier, but by then, we were all clear-headed. The kind of clear where the night feels heavy, like the world itself is exhaling and settling into silence. I remember the sound of the tires humming against the asphalt. I remember the cold blast of air sneaking in from Chris's cracked window. I remember thinking that everything felt almost too quiet. And then she appeared. One moment, the road was empty, just 2 lanes stretching ahead of us, black and endless. The next moment, there was someone standing there, a woman. She was right in front of the driver's side wheel well, no more than a few feet from the hood. Long, dark hair spilled over her shoulders and down her back. Her skin was pale, unnaturally pale, almost glowing under the headlights. She was draped in white clothing, something loose and flowing, like a dress caught in a slow-motion breeze. Chris swerved. Not much, just a twitch of the wheel, but enough to jerk the car sideways for a heartbeat. At the same time, he yanked his arm back inside, the cigarette falling from his fingers as he screamed, "Holy shit!" And me? I was already shouting before I even knew what I was saying. "Do you fucking see that?" I felt it then, like ice water pouring straight through me. A wave of cold that started in my chest and raced to the tips of my fingers. It was so fast, so sudden, that I actually gasped. And then she was gone. We hadn't hit her. There was no thump, no crunch, no body tumbling across the hood. It was like we had passed through her, like she was made of smoke and air and shadows. I twisted around in my seat, eyes locked on the rear window, trying to catch one last glimpse in the red wash of taillights. But the road behind us was empty, just asphalt stretching into darkness. Chris's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He kept muttering, "No, no, no, no," under his breath. Emily had finally looked up from her phone, her eyes wide as she scanned the road ahead. "What? What happened? What did you see?" Neither of us answered her right away. We were too shaken, too rattled. Finally, Chris let out a shaky laugh, but there was nothing funny in it. "I swear to God, man, I saw her, clear as fucking day. She was right there." "I saw her too," I said quickly. My voice cracked. "She was right there, long hair, white dress." Chris turned his head slightly, just enough to look at me without taking his eyes off the road. His face was pale, his expression tight. "You felt it too, didn't you?" I nodded, confused. "The cold?" "Yeah, I felt it." "No," he said, shaking his head. "Not that. When I pulled my arm in, I felt..." He trailed off, swallowed hard. "I felt a hand, warm. It dragged across my skin, slow, like someone brushing their fingers over me as we passed." Emily gasped. "Stop it. You guys are freaking me out. This isn't funny." But we weren't laughing. The rest of the ride felt endless. The air in the car was thick, heavy with tension. Every shadow along the roadside looked too dark. Every mile marker seemed to crawl by. I kept glancing in the rear window, half expecting to see her again, running after us or standing in the middle of the road. But she never came back. When Chris finally pulled off the highway near the Scranton Road exit where I was staying in a tiny rental house just off the service road, I practically jumped out of the car. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my guitar case. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her again. Pale face, dark hair, that flowing white dress. And worse, I kept feeling that cold rush sweeping through me, over and over, like she was still there, reaching out, brushing against my skin from some place just beyond sight. I thought about looking it up, checking if there'd been an accident out there, or if anyone else had reported something similar, but I didn't. Part of me didn't want to know. Part of me was terrified I'd find stories exactly like ours, proving it wasn't just some hallucination, but something real, something that was still out there. I've driven that stretch of highway since then, but never at night, and never without the memory of her burned into my mind. Because here's the thing, ghosts don't scare me in movies. Monsters, slashers, jump scares, I can laugh those off. But when you see something with your own eyes, when you feel it touch you, when you hear your friend scream in the exact same moment you do, that's not a story. That's not entertainment. That's real. And she's still out there, waiting for the next car to come barreling down Highway 20 between mile markers 310 and 313. The thing about long drives is, you start the trip thinking you'll make it home in one piece. You pack your snacks, fill the tank, set up your playlist, and promise yourself the hours will pass in a blur of road and conversation. You don't think about what's lurking out there, waiting for you in the empty stretches. But sometimes the road has other plans. This happened a couple winters back, on our way home from Las Vegas to Oregon. My wife and I had done that grueling 16-hour trip more times than I care to admit, and usually, we'd just grind through it in one shot. But that night, we decided to be smart about it. Stop and bend. Sleep in a hotel. Finish the last leg in the morning. We left Vegas before sunrise. The day was long, endless miles of desert highways. 375, 305, 95, 78. If you've ever driven them, you know what I mean when I say they're brutal. Whole stretches where roadside assistance doesn't exist, where it's just dirt mountains and sand forever. No towns, no lights, no gas stations, just you and the road, hour after hour. It gets into your head if you let it. By the time we rolled past Burns, Oregon, we'd been driving almost 11 and a half hours. We were exhausted, but we figured we could push through the last couple to Bend. Snow had started falling, fat flakes streaking across the headlights, smearing the windshield wipers. Visibility dropped to maybe 30 feet. The world outside the glass was nothing but white and black snow and the yawning night sky. The clock read just after 9 p.m. That's when it started. At first, it was just a feeling. You know that prickling sensation? Like your body knows something's wrong before your brain catches up? My chest tightened. My skin buzzed. My hands clenched the wheel harder than they needed to. I told myself it was just nerves, the isolation, the snow, the silence beyond the car. But deep down, I already knew better. Then, I heard it. A sound behind the music. Faint, high-pitched. Children. It was so soft at first. I thought maybe the song playing on the stereo had a weird sample in the background. A laugh, a word, a scrap of conversation. But as I listened, I realized the voices weren't part of the song. They were separate, distinct. Children talking? My stomach dropped. I kept my eyes forward, trying not to let on to my wife that something was wrong. And then she said it. "Do you hear that? Do you hear kids talking?" Her voice was sharp, tight with fear. The chill that ran through me in that moment was worse than anything I've ever felt in combat zones, worse than any horror movie. Because now I knew it wasn't just me. I wasn't imagining it. She heard it too. I killed the music instantly. The car went silent except for the soft roar of tires on snow. We both sat frozen, straining to hear. The voices were still there, clearer now. A boy and a girl, one younger, one older, whispering, murmuring, talking like children do when they're in the back seat of a car. Only there was no one in our back seat. I grabbed my phone, pressed it to my ear. Dead silent, no sound. My wife did the same, fumbling with her phone in the glow of the dashboard. Nothing. And yet the voices went on. They weren't outside. They weren't muffled by distance. They were in the car with us, right behind our heads. I swear to you, the hair on the back of my neck stood up so hard it hurt. My skin was crawling, every nerve screaming that something was wrong. My wife snapped the little cosmetic mirror down, but she wouldn't look into it. She was terrified of seeing something, anything, sitting in the back seat. I wanted to turn around, but I couldn't. My body locked up. All I could do was stare at the endless, empty, snow-covered road ahead. The voices grew louder. Still children, still indistinct, but now it sounded like they were shifting, moving. At one point, it felt like the girl's voice was right behind my ear, so close, I thought I felt breath on my neck. I considered listening in, really trying to make out what they were saying. But something deep inside me screamed, "Don't." It wasn't just fear, it was something worse. Like if I gave them my attention, if I acknowledged them too much, I'd be opening a door I could never close. So instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I cranked the stereo, loud as it would go. But even then, even blasting rock at full volume, I could still hear them. Their voices threaded through the music like a parasite. Children's laughter, whispering, talking. 3 minutes. That's how long it lasted. 3 minutes of hell, stretched out like eternity. My wife sat stiff as a statue, clutching the armrest, lips moving silently, praying. She doesn't believe in this kind of thing, she never has. But in that moment, she prayed. And me? I prayed too. Not out loud, just in my head. A desperate, pleading prayer. Please stop. Please leave us alone. Please keep us safe. And then, silence. The voices cut off all at once, like someone had flipped a switch. The music thundered from the speakers, filling the car. But underneath, nothing. No children, no whispers. Just the sound of snow on glass, the road humming under the tires. I turned the music down slowly, waiting. My wife let out a long, shuddering sigh, like she'd been holding her breath the whole time. For the next half hour, we didn't speak. We just drove, both of us hyper-aware of the silence, listening, waiting for it to return. It never did. Eventually, we started to talk about it, piecing together what we'd experienced, the timing, the voices, the way they'd sounded inside the car. My wife admitted how scared she'd been, how she couldn't even bring herself to glance in the mirror. I admitted how close I'd been to turning around, how close I'd been to listening to them. But I didn't, and I thank God for that. Because something told me that if I had, things might have gone very differently. The strangest part of all this is, we know how it sounds. If we told our friends or family, they'd roll their eyes. Kids talking in the car, after 11 hours of driving? You were tired, you imagined it. But no, we both heard it. At the same time, on that lonely stretch of Highway 20, somewhere between Burns and Bend, maybe near Glass Butte, no other cars around for miles, nothing but the woods and the dark and the snow. I'll never forget the moment my wife turned to me and said, "Do you hear kids talking?" That was the confirmation. That was when I knew this wasn't just some trick of the mind. This was real. And here's the thing, I don't think they were ever outside. I don't think those voices came from the woods, or from the snow, or even from the road itself. I think they came from us, from the car, from within. Like something wanted to climb in and make itself at home. I still don't know what we encountered that night. Ghosts of children who died on that highway? Some kind of echo from another time? Or something worse, something that just likes to wear the voices of children to get close to you? All I know is, we survived. And I'll never, ever take Highway 20 at night again. So if you ever find yourself driving that lonely stretch and you hear children talking in the back seat when there shouldn't be anyone there, turn up your music. Keep your eyes forward. And whatever you do, don't listen.